7 centimeters. The nurse's smile disappeared mid-sentence. She stepped out into the hallway, and through the glass, I watched her face change completely. Watched the detective who'd been guarding my room all week suddenly go rigid beside her. "Security just pulled someone off the camera feed downstairs," she said when she came back in. "Trying to force the locked doors into maternity. Matches the description." My whole body went numb. Somewhere in that building, behind a door only as strong as whoever was standing in front of it, the man who once chased me across a backyard with a machete was trying to reach the room where my daughter was about to be born. This didn't happen in one day. It took 3 years to get here. One small betrayal stacked on top of another, until the betrayals became a man pacing a maternity ward, waiting for his moment. I was 28, the first time I truly understood what my brother's best friend was capable of. I grew up the middle child, between my older brother and my younger sister, in a house where nobody talked about hard things until they exploded on their own. He wasn't blood. He was my brother's best friend since middle school, at every holiday, every graduation, every family funeral, for as long as any of us could remember. By the time he was 20, he wasn't a guest anymore. He was just part of the furniture of our family. We even dated, briefly, in our early 20s. 8 quiet months that ended without any drama. 2 people who simply wanted different things. I thought that was the whole story for a long time.
He was diagnosed with a serious psychiatric condition at 26. My brother called me crying. Police had found him walking down the middle of a highway at 3 a.m, convinced the streetlights were sending him private messages. I sat with him in an emergency room that smelled like bleach and burnt coffee for 6 hours that night, and I told him I wasn't going anywhere. For the first year, I meant every word of it. I drove him to appointments, I sat through 2 hospitalizations. I learned the names of his medications before I learned some of my own coworkers' last names. I told myself this was loyalty. Then came the afternoon in the backyard. He'd stopped taking his medication 3 weeks earlier without telling anyone. He showed up uninvited to a family cookout, agitated, talking fast about people documenting him, watching him. I tried to calm him down the way I always had. Instead, he accused me of being one of them, one of the people surveilling him. He walked to his truck and came back holding a machete he used for clearing brush on his family's land. He never swung it at me. I want to be honest about that, because for years afterward, I used that one detail to convince myself it hadn't really been that bad. He chased me across the yard, screaming that I was recording him, while I ran and screamed for my brother, until 3 neighbors and my brother tackled him into the grass. When he came back to himself, he cried and apologized and said he didn't remember most of it. I forgave him. That's what you do for someone you've known since you were 15, I told myself. I stayed close to him for another 1.5 years after that, quietly deciding the machete belonged to the illness, not to him. The real break didn't come until I started seeing the man who would become my daughter's father, 2 years before she was born. He found out through my brother and called me. Calm at first, then not. He told me the new relationship was a mistake, that this man was dangerous. When I told him it wasn't his decision to make, his voice went flat and certain in a way I recognized instantly from the day he'd picked up the machete. He told me, plainly, that he'd let his hunting dogs handle it if my new partner ever set foot on his property. That was the moment I finally cut him off completely. No calls, no messages, no family gatherings where he might show up. I told my brother I loved him, but that this friend of his was no longer welcome anywhere near my life. And if my brother wanted a relationship with me going forward, that boundary wasn't up for negotiation. Everyone respected it. Everyone except my brother's girlfriend. She'd known him even before she knew me. And that old loyalty was about to cost me almost everything. My brother's girlfriend had dated him for almost 3 years by that point, And she'd known my ex-partner even longer than she'd known our family. They'd worked together in their early 20s, long before either of them met us. She told me, more than once, that she refused to pick sides in the situation, as if my physical safety were a side in a disagreement rather than simply a fact. I found that strange even then. I didn't yet understand how dangerous that stance would become. When I got pregnant, I begged everyone in my life to keep it quiet. I told my brother directly, word for word. Nobody tells him. Not where I live, not how far along I am, nothing at all. He promised. I believed him, because I wanted to. 24 hours later, a voicemail arrived. My ex, demanding to know when he'd get to meet his baby. We hadn't spoken in over a year. There was only one person the information could have come from. When I confronted her, my hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped my phone twice. He deserved to know, she told me. He's stable now, he's on his medication. I reminded her that 3 years earlier, in her own boyfriend's backyard, that same man had chased me with a blade. That was the illness, she said. You weren't there. You don't know he's not better. She promised no more information would leave her mouth. I want to be fair, even now looking back. I think she genuinely believed what she was telling herself, that she was building some kind of bridge nobody else was brave enough to build. She was wrong, but I don't think, not yet, that she was being cruel on purpose. That distinction stopped mattering to me very quickly. The first real collapse came at my baby shower. 80 guests, a rented hall, string lights, my mother crying happy tears, and a dress she'd bought specifically for the day. I was 7 months along when the doors at the back of the room opened and he walked in, uninvited, scanning the crowd until he found my face, then moving toward me fast. Security, hired for an unrelated event in the next hall, intercepted him near the gift table. He fought them hard enough to draw blood through a jacket sleeve, screaming that he was the real father, that everyone in that room was helping steal his child from him. I locked myself in a bathroom and sat on the tile floor shaking, while my sister banged on the door telling me it was safe to come out. It took 11 minutes for the police to arrive. 11 minutes is an extraordinarily long time when you are 7 months pregnant, hiding from a man who once chased you with a blade. When I called her that night, furious, asking how he could possibly have known about the shower, she told me flatly, "Because I told you I would. No apology in it at all." He's dangerous, and dangerous people who feel shut out get worse, not better. I was trying to keep the peace. I told her she'd handed a stalker my location. "He's not a stalker," she said. "He's sick." I told her he could be both, and hung up. I thought, foolishly, that public humiliation and a police report would be the natural stopping point. It wasn't. 2 weeks later, he appeared at my prenatal appointment, sitting in the waiting room like any expectant father, until my doctor recognized him from the photo attached to my restraining order and had him removed. She swore up and down when I called her in a fury that she'd said nothing since the shower. I wanted to believe her. The math simply didn't support it. He knew my doctor's office. He knew my appointment times down to the hour. Details that lived inside a very small circle of people. Then came the Facebook page, built 2 months before my due date, growing to over 11,000 followers, filled with ultrasound images that weren't even mine, long emotional posts about a good man denied access to his child by a family that had turned a scared woman against him. He never used my real name, but he used enough. My hair color, my hometown, the fact that I worked with children, that anyone who actually knew me would understand exactly who he meant. The comments were the part that finally broke something loose in my chest. Strangers offering lawyer referrals, strangers organizing fundraisers, strangers calling him brave, a victim of a system that assumes the worst of fathers with mental illness. Then one comment stopped my heart cold. "Stay strong. The truth always comes out." Posted under my brother's girlfriend's own name, her own profile photo smiling back at me from a lake trip 3 summers earlier. I thought that comment was the whole betrayal. I had no idea it was only the smallest, most visible piece of something much bigger sitting underneath it. I called my brother the instant I found that comment. His girlfriend was publicly supporting my stalker under her own real name. He gave me the same reflexive defense he'd given for 3 years. "She wouldn't do that." I sent him the screenshots while we were still on the phone. I heard his breathing change on the other end, faster. The sound of someone trying very hard not to cry. "It's her account," he finally said. "But there's more." He'd found messages on her laptop, photographs of me, my ultrasounds, my schedule, sent to my stalker over months. He hadn't been looking for it. It had simply been open on the counter. I dropped my phone. My partner picked it up in time to hear the rest. A draft message, never sent, sitting in her outbox. It had my address, my due date, the name of the hospital where I was planning to give birth. My due date was 2 weeks away. Every reassurance she had given me, face to face, had been a lie stacked on top of another lie. And the only reason that final message had never actually reached him was that my brother happened to glance at the wrong laptop screen on the wrong night. I stood in my kitchen with one hand flat against my stomach, feeling my daughter shift under my palm, and understood in a single cold wave exactly what 4 months of half-truths had really been. My phone buzzed. A photo from a number I didn't recognize. The two of them at a cafe, leaning over a phone displaying a map with a caption underneath. "Your sister-in-law is very helpful. See you soon, both of you." We left the house with clothes shoved into a bag, unfolded. She called, sobbing, saying there was a van parked outside my house, cameras, some kind of father's rights group live streaming from my own front lawn. Insisting she'd never actually hit send on that message. I hung up mid-sentence. Through the bedroom window, I could see him pacing my lawn, talking to a camera with the rehearsed cadence of a man who had practiced this moment. We went out the back door, into a car already running in the alley. We spent the following weeks in a safe house arranged through a victims advocacy program. Cameras on every entrance, a door code that changed weekly, a panic button wired directly to dispatch, a new phone number known only to 3 people on Earth. It still wasn't enough. Someone from his online support network called every maternity ward within 50 miles, pretending to be worried family, asking which hospital had a patient matching my description scheduled to deliver. It took 4 days for them to find the right one. He was already pacing the entrance before I ever set foot inside it, until a guard recognized his photo and walked him off the property. He went quietly. That terrified me more than a struggle would have. A man that patient wasn't giving up. He was simply waiting for a better door. Which brings us back to where this story started. 7 centimeters, the nurse's face changing, a detective in the hallway, security downstairs pulling a man off the camera feed who matched his description, trying to force his way through a locked door only as strong as whoever was guarding it. 20 minutes passed like 20 years. "It's confirmed," the detective said when she came back. "It's him, he's in custody in the lobby, and he is not getting anywhere near this floor." My daughter was born 40 minutes later. 6 pounds, 9 ounces, screaming the second she hit the air. I held her against my chest and finally let myself fall apart after 4 straight months of not being able to afford to.
He was arrested that day on stalking, criminal trespass, and violation of the protective order I'd filed after the baby shower. My brother left his girlfriend that same night, though it took him another 2 weeks to actually move out of the apartment they'd shared for almost 3 years. 2 weeks she spent alternating between tearful apologies and posts on that same account, defending her actions as coming from a place of compassion the rest of the family supposedly lacked. My mother, who'd spent 3 years telling me to be patient because she remembered him as a sweet boy, finally understood the difference between the child she remembered and the man who'd stood outside a maternity ward waiting for a better door. My younger sister, who'd said almost nothing through the entire ordeal, turned out to be the one quietly building an entire timeline of his movements with a private investigator paid for out of her own savings. A timeline that ended up directly in the hands of the prosecutor's office.
His former girlfriend tried once more, about 6 weeks after the birth, showing up at my mother's house with a gift for the baby, insisting she'd never meant for things to go this far. My mother told her, gently, but without hesitation, that she wasn't welcome, and closed the door. I felt something unexpected when I heard about it. Not satisfaction, something closer to grief. Because underneath everything, I did grieve. I grieved the version of her who used to help me pick paint colors for the nursery, and the version of him who used to fix my brother's bike and remember everyone's birthdays without being asked. Those people had been real too, once, even if neither of them existed anymore in any form I could reach. The legal fallout stretched across the better part of a year. A custody petition his lawyer eventually withdrew once a judge reviewed the restraining order and the Facebook evidence and made it clear it had no chance of succeeding. He eventually accepted a plea deal involving mandatory inpatient psychiatric treatment alongside a lengthy stalking conviction. Not quite justice, not quite mercy, just the closest thing the system had to offer. My daughter is 8 months old now. We live in a different house, in a different town, one he has never seen. My brother and I are closer than we ever were before any of this happened. In the specific way that surviving something together sometimes rebuilds a relationship stronger than it started. I don't hate the woman who nearly cost me everything. I don't think hate would fix either of us. But I no longer let anyone's good intentions stand in for my own safety. Not for family, not for old loyalty, not for a version of a person who used to exist before an illness or a blind spot rewrote them into someone else entirely. Some bridges, once you understand what's waiting on the other side of them, are meant to be burned, not maintained out of hope. If you were in this story, would you have cut off contact the first time, or would you have given him the same chance as she did? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. Subscribe for a new story every day. See you tomorrow.